All right. Well, I am now joined by a very special guest, 14-year MLB vet and former Orioles broadcaster, Mike Bordick. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I just wanted to start with the amazing work you're doing as the chairman of the board of directors for the League of Dreams. It's a great nonprofit that gives special needs children an opportunity to play baseball and softball. I was watching some of the old videos you guys did back when you could be around people, and it was like Trey Mancini, Adam Kolarek were there. It looks like the most fun and rewarding thing ever. How did you kind of get involved with that?
Yeah, thanks for asking about this, really. Well, about, 17, 18 years ago, Frank Kolarek, who's from Catonsville, Maryland, he started this nonprofit, and he kind of came up with the Special Olympics. So we had a feel for working with kids for special needs. He thought there was an opportunity there to really work with kids in baseball and softball. And it started gradually, building itself up. We have a couple incredible sponsors right now, the Cal Ripken Jr. Foundation, who've been so incredible for us, instrumental in putting on more programs, and the Children's Guild, which is just I don't know that many people know about it, but I'm telling you, you want to talk about a trend-setting learning institute. They help kids that, come from broken homes and give them opportunities to learn and then get them into the workforce. It's just an incredible program. And so we're fortunate to be involved with them. They front some money so that we can put on more clinics and camps for these kids. And it really started in a parking lot, in Catonsville, Maryland. And it just kind of has grown and it keeps growing. I think there's a great need for this because it's not only rewarding, obviously, to work with kids with special needs and see their face light up every time they make contact or catch a ball. It's just something that they don't get to do often enough, right? But to see the look on the volunteers' faces. Now, this is really the beauty of our program. So we'll get baseball teams to come in, whether it be high school or college. We work with the University of Maryland. You mentioned Trey Mancini and Adam Kolarek. Some big leaguers have been involved as well, Major League alumni. So to have those guys work with the kids, it's just a double impact because you can see the impact it has on the players, and you can see that these kids feel like they're part of the team now. And that's what we want. We want to see that joy. And when you see parents crying on the sidelines because their kids just have never been exposed to this type of joy, right? And I think everybody loves the game of baseball. Everybody loves softball, all sport for that matter. But, special needs kids sometimes don't get that opportunity. And our goal is that every special need kid that wants to play a sport, because we're getting more involved in other sports. We've done swimming, we've done CrossFit, we've done beat baseball over at the Maryland School for the Blind. So we're starting to get more involved, almost like a gym class, if you will. But with these volunteers, really makes it a special day. So excited about it. And I'm excited that it keeps growing and there's just interest in it. So I'm very, very lucky to be part of that. There's so many wonderful people involved with this program.
It truly is special what you guys are doing there. But for people that are, they want to find out more about it, for more information, maybe about some of the upcoming events in 2021, now that we can hopefully get out and be outside and around people again, like where can they go to find all that?
Yeah, we're just starting to, book some of these great games and stuff. Allied Sports is a great partner. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to start putting together some programs. Everybody, it's been really slow to get people back outside, but it seems like it's a green light now. So there's a lot of excitement. Leagueofdreams.org is where you want to go. We're making vast improvements to our website. We're going to start a podcast. Frank Kolarek and I are going to start a podcast, and it's just going to be for any viewer and every viewer to listen to maybe sports stories, inspirational stories of people that have gone through the process of success, right? The ups and downs it takes, sometimes starting in Little League, getting your feelings hurt sometimes, showing some vulnerability, and then ultimately having success. I talked to Jim Palmer, talked to a good friend of mine, Jeff Rebele, even interviewed Brooks Robinson the other day. So we're trying to put all this together and hopefully have it a site for everybody to come to, special needs kids, some of the volunteers. We wanted to make it very interactive. I think there are going to be so many great parts of this website, so more people can be involved.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm definitely, I encourage everybody to check that out. I was doing my research and I saw that you have it was a baseball television show in the works. What's that about? What's the premise for that? I was really excited when I saw that.
Yeah. So I unfortunately didn't get to go back and work with the Orioles on TV. So I have some free time. I thought doing the broadcasting stuff was a great way for me to continue to be involved in the game and spread the good word about baseball. Didn't quite work out that way. So I'm involved right now with the Baseball Warehouse, and the owner of the Baseball Warehouse, Matt Morris, fronted some money he wanted to put together a pilot TV show, much like there was old school baseball show back in the 70s and 80s called the Baseball Bunch. And Johnny Bench did that. And he gave instruction. He talked about some, lessons learned on the field. Obviously, some great guests. I remember a couple with like Ozzie Smith was on there. So we were trying to do that. And we interviewed Jim Palmer. He talked about his process. An amazing story. Now, I know a lot of people know Jim Palmer is an incredible Hall of Famer with amazing numbers, but his childhood, and most players have an exceptional story of really what it took. Jim Palmer lost his father when he was 9 years old. He had never played organized baseball. His mom moved out to the West Coast. He moved a couple more times. His mom got remarried. Jim Palmer went through a lot. It's not easy for a kid to move. And then all of a sudden he found himself in the game. I think after losing his father, he lost himself in sport. And then he got drafted by the Orioles and met Cal Ripken Jr., changed his whole life. He became committed to being the best player ever. He really locked his horns into baseball, and he became one of the greatest pitchers of all time. It's a very inspirational story. And then the next segment, we had a kid that went to St. Paul's High School right here in Maryland. He got drafted by the Blue Jays, and right now he's trying to work his way up. So another great story that local kids can look at and say, oh my gosh, look at this. A kid right for our backyard, gets a shot to make it to the big leagues. And then I also interviewed a rec team. They were coming through COVID and just talked to parents and kids, how they dealt with it and stuff. So hoping that might catch some legs and take off a little bit, but it was fun putting that together. We're trying to show it around and see if anybody has any interest. I think there's a need for good baseball shows and for people to hear, quality stories and hear some vulnerabilities from some of the greatest players of all time.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Keep us posted on that. I would love to know, if it gets picked up, where it goes, because everything you said, especially the Jim Palmer portion of that, it's just like that. I could listen to that guy talk for hours. So anytime you got Palmer involved, I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's so well spoken. And I felt like Roy Firestone. I asked him about, a transitional moment. And he was at an awards banquet. And he said, my mom came up to me and said, Max Palmer would like you to take his last name. And that night he said, yeah, and he became Jim Palmer. He started crying, man. I'm getting emotional just talking about it. Those are they're turning points of some of the things that I think we all go through: mental anguish, mentally trying times, and how you overcome and accept things. And man, I just love listening to those legends, and Palmer is definitely a legend.
Absolutely. So I'd love to kind of talk about your story and the way how you got to the big leagues. I was reading up about you. There's two things that stood out to me when I was doing my reading up on your road to the big leagues. It was growing up, you really wanted to play football, but you were never big enough, and you weren't drafted in any you weren't drafted at all. Like, how much of those two things contribute to the way you approach the game?
Well, I think there are a couple different ways I look at it. I always felt like I was the run of the litter. I was never a big guy, so I always had to find ways to prove myself. My dad was in the Air Force, so we traveled around a lot, and so that was hard enough. And it seemed like every time we landed in a new spot, there was a sport going on, and my dad would say, you got to get out there, man, you got to play. And I was like, Dad, look at how big those guys are. This is a football field. And he goes, you know what you got to do? You got to go up to that coach and say, dynamite comes in small packages. And I was like, all right, I'll try that. Well, I got my butt kicked around a lot in football until I grew. But those kind of experiences, I think, really help kind of calcify some things in me, make me a little, stronger, if you will, mentally, have that toughness. And when my dad ended up retiring, we went to Maine because that's where my mom was from. So I went to a small high school up in Maine, Hamden Academy. I love the Broncos. And this is where I really fell in love with football. Now, this school had only 600 kids. So I go out on the tryout for the football team. I make the team. I never left the field. I played offense. I played defense. My senior year, I ended up being a quarterback, but I kicked I punted. I had so much fun. And I don't know that many football players nowadays get to do that because everything's so specialized, And when I was a freshman, I went to a huge high school in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. My dad was still stationed at Pease Air Force Base. And I got cut from the football team. And my dad, who obviously, wanted me to get a little tougher, he said, you got to go back there and you tell that football coach that you'll do anything. You'll pick up jock straps. You got to be on that team. Sure enough, I went back and he put me through the ring too. Every night, it seemed like I was challenged against the biggest guys, but I ended up starting on defense, but I was only a defensive back. So, and I always loved to run with the ball. I love being a wide receiver and catching the ball and stuff too. So, man, what a blessing it was to go up to Hamden Academy and, never leave the field. So I really fell in love with football up there. I think I always knew in my heart, though, that baseball was the sport that I was cut out to play. I just loved it. But just like every kid, I think back then, when baseball season was over, you throw your glove in the closet, you go play the next sport, So it just isn't enough of that today. And that's probably another subject that we could probably talk about for hours. Just too much sports specificity going on right now. We got to let kids be athletes and play as many sports as they can. Anyway, so yeah, I went to Hamden. I played baseball and football there. I got recruited by a great program, and not many people probably know this, but the University of Maine back in the early 80s went to the College World Series 5 out of 6 years, and I got recruited to go to that program. Went up there as a freshman. We went to the College World Series. Like usual, we played 2 and barbecued and got back home, and ended up going back my junior year as well. Junior year, we had a great team. We had a few guys get drafted off that team. And I thought I was going to get drafted. I really did. I hit 360 something. I had been approached by a guy from the draft and asked if I was if I wanted to get drafted. I was like, heck yeah, I do. Of course, our coach was big on the 4-year program. I didn't get drafted. I didn't hang my head though, because I had an opportunity to go to Cape Cod. And man, oh man, I played 2 summer leagues in Auburn, Maine, the Twilight League there. I had a blast. And then I, raised the bar, man. Every chance you get, I had an opportunity to go to Cape Cod and play against the greatest players in the country, Wood Bat League. I was hitting about 200. It's funny because I remember Craig Biggio was on my team. We were playing for the Yarmouth Dennis Red Sox. And he and I were both struggling right maybe below 200, man. And each day we were like, man, this is tough with these wood bats. Guys are throwing hard. And I happened to put together a great weekend of baseball, made some plays. I even think I got a couple hits. And JP Ricciardi asked me after the game if I would be interested in signing. I said, yeah, can I talk to a couple people? He said, well, you got a 24-hour window. And I talked to as many people as I could. And it came down to, chasing your dream. They gave me an opportunity to go back and finish my degree. Said they were going to pay for that. And I did. Next thing I know, I was out in Medford, Oregon.
Wow. We talk all the time about like guys having chips on their shoulders. Did the fact you weren't drafted at all and, everything we talked about before, did that kind of lend into that? Did you have a chip on your shoulder at that point?
Well, I think sometimes what happens is, I think I've always had a little chip on my shoulder because, like I said, just being the small guy, so many times you got to prove yourselves, right? So I think I did going down there. But when I didn't get drafted, I didn't have a chip on my shoulder. I honestly thought I just wasn't good enough. And, so I took that personally and I wanted to just continue to learn and try to make myself as good as I could. And I think what happens is, and it was probably Cape Cod that really helped me do this, watching and listening and learning from other players, how they went about their business, not necessarily talking to them about it, but just watching. And that's when I started picking things up, seeing some of the best players in the country, how they went about their business, how they might have turned a double play or make a play on a slow roller. And then when I ended up getting signed and going to Medford, Oregon, it was the first time I was ever exposed to Latin American baseball players. And wow, did that change my game. I learned how to be quicker. I learned how to have quicker release and practice that, not to look flashy, but because you needed to be quick and efficient out there in the field. And man, oh man, I kept working on that. And evidently it worked out okay because I climbed that proverbial ladder. I went single A, double A, AAA. And in 1990, I ended up making the team. Now, it was a little bit of luck involved, which I think there is. But in 1990, if you remember, there was a lockout. And they expanded the rosters by 2 players. And I was one of the lucky 2 players. I only was in the big leagues for a month, sent me back down, but I got called up at the end of 1990, got another month of experience. They sent me home. They said, okay, we're going to the postseason. We don't need you anymore. We got our guys. We're trying to head back to the World Series. It just got done winning the World Series in '89, beating the Giants. And I asked Tony La Russa, actually, I said, do you mind if I go to Instructional League and work with Rick Burleson, who was down there, and make a hitting tape that I can use over the winter? He says, wow, that's a great idea. Headed down to Phoenix, Arizona. And I don't know, I was watching the postseason. The A's were playing the Red Sox, and Walt Weiss got taken out at second base, man. Bunged his knee up bad. They called down to Arizona, and they asked if I was still there. They said, yeah, he's still here. Well, he's on the World Series roster. I ended up being on the World Series roster. I played in 3 games. I didn't start any of the games, but I'll tell you what, it might have been easier to start than go in late in the game and try to make a play on a ground ball. But fortunately, I made, I think I had 2 plays, and I made both of those. And the first play I made was at Riverfront Stadium. Of course, we were playing the Cincinnati Reds, and I had to go in and pinch run. Rob Dibble was pitching. I was scared to death. My lead was about this big because, watching Rob Dibble, he throws 105 miles an hour. He actually did pick over, and I was about to dive back in, but all I had to do was take a half step. So I was right there at first base. Anyway, I hadn't thrown a ball. I hadn't taken any ground balls or anything. I'd been sitting in a cold dugout for 7 innings, and then I had to go out in the field, and I'm trying to make the throw over to first base to Mark McGwire over first base. I'm thinking, there is no way I'm going to be able to do this, man. I'm trying to talk myself into, come on, man. All you got to do is get it there. Eric Davis is the first batter of the inning. He hits me like a 3-hopper. And to this day, I say it was the greatest play I ever made. Caught it, threw a strike to McGwire. He was out. And I'm telling you, with the nerves I had going, it was the most nervous I've ever been in my life. And I was still able to find a way to get it done. And I feel good about that. One of the greatest plays I ever made.
What do you think is harder, pinch hitting or like being a defensive replacement late in the game?
A defensive replacement for sure. No doubt about it. I mean, pinch hitting, my gosh, just get up there and hack, right? I mean, I think I would have probably been a better pinch hitter. I'd sit on a fastball and let it fly. But defensively, because typically it's a tight ball game if you're going in for defensive purposes at the end. But really, that's the whole reason why I made it to the big leagues. One of the first meetings Tony La Russa had with me was, listen, all I want you to do is catch the ball. Anything you do with the bat is gravy. And that's the way I looked at it. And I kind of looked at that pretty much my whole career, man. Just catch that ball.
So much of this game is mental. Like most of this game is played between the ears, I think. Like there's so much failure involved. Like what methods did you use throughout your career to like not let the failures get you down, or like, you have a bad play on defense? How did you not let that kind of carry over to your offense?
Yeah, it was tough. It really is. And you're exactly right. I think there is so much talent in baseball. If you get drafted or signed to play professional baseball, you're this close. There isn't much of a separation between a big league player and a minor league player, or even a college player for that matter. There isn't much of a skill difference, but it's that mental mindset, that consistency to overcome some of the failures, right? Because baseball is just absolutely built on failure. My saving grace was Harvey Dorfman, period. Harvey Dorfman was the mental coach for the Oakland Athletics. They were cutting edge at that time, arguably one of the best organizations in the game, top to bottom. And Harvey Dorfman was their team psychologist. And he would pull guys aside, talk to them. Carl Keel, who was one of the old school, hard-nosed farm directors in the game. He'd been in the game his whole life. He loved to scream on players and really try to break them down and see if they were tough enough. And I was one of those guys. I remember in single A, we had an off day, and my roommate was hitting extra. He was kind of struggling a little bit, and I had been doing pretty well. I actually made the all-star team in single A. So I came in to pick him up, and lo and behold, there's Carl Keel. And I was happy because I was playing pretty well. And Carl says, hey, Mike, how's that weightlifting program going? And I said, what do you mean, Carl, with these pipes? And I'm kind of a jester, I guess. I like to be lighthearted and have fun. Carl Keel did not see any humor in that. He screamed me up and down. And he said that there are guys in this organization that are busting their butt to try to make it to the big leagues. If you're not going to put the time and effort in, why don't you just get your butt home? And literally, I thought he sent me home. I called my dad after that meeting and I said, Dad, I think I'm done. I think I just got released. I was really concerned. The next day, Harvey Dorfman shows up, the team psychiatrist, right? And he pulls me aside. He says, listen, Carl's making a point. He says, you're a professional athlete now. You have to take advantage of every opportunity to make yourself better through strength training, to get yourself stronger, through nutrition, to make sure you take care of yourself so you have consistent energy through the course of a season, because a big league season, 162 games, is a physical and mental grind. It is the toughest challenge anybody can face. And I think that was a turning point in my career. And Harvey Dorfman, I still look to his book, The Mental Game of Baseball, as my Bible. Right underneath your phone, or this is, believe it or not, my mental game book. I have this that they gave me a while ago, and it's compiled with, I'm sorry, did I go off? It's compiled with Dr. Dave McDuff, who is the Orioles team psychiatrist. So there's all kinds of great mental strategies. I mean, I look at it every day, and I love to pass these messages on to kids. I give lessons now, and I'm not kidding you, man. Kids 10 to 12, the first thing they ask me is, how do you overcome the fear when you step in a batter's box? Because all they hear is their coach screaming on them about level swing or keep your head in there. Their parents are screaming on them about, do this, do that. There is so much pressure on young kids in sports today. And my message is typically, listen, you got to enjoy yourself, find a way. And if you find, that you're feeling anxious in the box, step out, take a deep breath in your nose, blow it out your mouth. Do it again. And if you're still not feeling better, do it one more time, man. This is you. We want you to enjoy this experience, right? And then step in there feeling relaxed. And then it just comes, see the ball and hit the ball. Listen, I know every parent, I've got 6 kids, and I want every one of my kids to be a professional athlete. We all do, especially if your kid's playing a sport, right? It's not going to happen to everybody. You want them to enjoy it. You want them to love the experience. And when they do, they will start working at it. If they love it that much, they will start working at it. Just let them enjoy the sport, let them enjoy it as much as, sometimes it's better to, bite your tongue sometimes. I have a great example I'd love to share with you. One of my middle son, he's 21 now, probably my best athlete. He played baseball and lacrosse up until his freshman year in school. And when he was 10 years old, he and I were in the backyard playing lacrosse, and I was throwing him some ground balls, and I threw him a ground ball, and I said, hey, Dawson, I said, you probably get a little bit more consistent with those if you got in your legs. And I kind of showed him how to scoop up a ground ball with a lacrosse racket, right? Is that what you call it? Lacrosse racket or stick? And yeah. So he stops, he walks up to me. He's 10 years old. He goes, Dad, did you ever play lacrosse? I said, no, I didn't. He turned around and walked away. That was it. Looked at me like, why don't you just keep your mouth shut and let me play my sport? He didn't play baseball. He ended up playing lacrosse. He went to college. He played D3 lacrosse down in Denver for a little bit. So, it's tough, man. We walk a fine line as parents. We want so much for our kids. We want them to be the best and thrive and succeed. But sometimes we just got to pull back, because I think we just put the chains on them, man, and it wears them down a little bit. Back to that mental part of the game. Even the youngest kids are involved with that mental game. So you got to make them feel good about it, feel positive, and they'll thrive.
Absolutely. So your game, we've talked about this, is so much predicated on your defense. Like, you're a whiz at shortstop. How much work went into that behind the scenes? Like, how much work did you put in, like, throughout the year to be, one of the best defensive shortstops of the era?
Yeah, well, listen, I hung my hat on my defense and I hung my hat on my preparation. And I tried to take advantage of every opportunity to make myself better. I had a very consistent routine with what I did on the field. Typically, I would take my 15 minutes of ground balls while the other group was taking their batting practice, and I would get some balls hit straight at me. I'd get down into my legs as low as I could go, so I get my eyes down underneath that baseball and see it as well as possible. I think I just prided myself on the fundamentals, especially that I learned up at the University of Maine, doing so much indoor training. John Wink and our head coach, that's what he just kept pounding in every day, the fundamental, the fundamental. So I was able to, work, I think, off a solid fundamental and build athleticism through strength training, through working with major league strength coaches, that just made you better. And I think every year I really just tried to continue to raise the bar, not necessarily with my fielding skills, but I think more with my body, my nutrition, and my mind. I think that's really what it was. Now, you never lose sight of your skill work. The most important thing for any athlete, if you're an infielder, take ground balls, and throw. I threw every day. Now my arm doesn't straighten out anymore, but I think throwing every day helped my accuracy and it helped my arm stay strong. There aren't many guys that can play till they're 37 years old, so I think that was really, really part of it, taking care of myself and just trying to raise my own personal bar, and watching other guys go about their business. Coming up with Walt Weiss on the Oakland A's. Walt Weiss, in my mind, was the most underrated shortstop of all time. He is the most athletic guy I had ever played with. To this day, still the most athletic shortstop I have ever seen. The things he could do on the field were amazing. And I studied him. I studied his actions. One of the first days I took ground balls with Walt Weiss, just trying to pick his mind about everything. I was like, Walt, man, what's the most important thing out here? He said, your feet. You got to have good feet, man. Keep working your feet. And I would watch him every day, catch a ball, boom, and his feet would come up to a perfect throwing position. Man, I tried to emulate him every day. And I think he helped me in my game. And, he's still coaching in the big leagues right now. He's bench coach for the Braves. Just an incredible baseball mind and a great athlete.
Wow. I'd love to talk about your move to Baltimore. So everybody, of course, knows the story. You took over for Cal Ripken Jr. at shortstop, but I want to know about the behind the scenes, the leading up to that. So you signed there as a free agent. What were the conversations like that off season? Did you know that Ripken was going to get shifted over to third? Take me through the behind the scenes stuff before that.
Man, that was some intense times, man. The first time I'd ever been a free agent. Historically, the Oakland A's didn't bring back, and they still don't bring back their free agents. They didn't like to re-sign guys. And the Oakland A's had kind of gone through transition time. Tony La Russa went to St. Louis. McGuire went to St. Louis. Steinbach went up to Minnesota. So I think I was looking to transition as well. The A's didn't really show much interest in bringing me back. As a matter of fact, they never even talked about contracts because they had Miguel Tejada was coming up. So who needed me, right? Anyway, so I got a call from Hall of Fame general manager Pat Gillick. And Pat Gillick was just an incredible guy that was just open and honest with me. And he said, listen, this is a situation where it's going to happen probably with or without you. We think that you are the right guy to come in and fill his shoes. And, after, some soul searching and thinking if this was going to be the right thing, we wanted to come back to the East Coast anyway. My wife was born and raised in Maine. All our family was back here on the East Coast. And how about this? The Baltimore Orioles just went to the postseason in '96. They were, in my mind, they looked like the team that was going to be the next dynasty. I just came from a nice little mini dynasty with the Oakland A's where the bar was so high that it just made my game so much better. And I needed that. I needed to get back. I needed that feel of we're playing for a ring today. Some of those later teams, I'm not saying I didn't take the field to play to win a championship, but we just didn't have enough. And I think players know when they do and when they don't. And when I got to Baltimore, I felt like we were going to win the World Series for the next 5 years. We had Cal at third, Robbie Alomar at second, Palmeiro at first, Brady Anderson in center, Eric Davis in left, BJ Surhoff was out there, Chris Hoyle. I mean, just loaded. Mike Mussina on the bump, Scott Erickson, Jimmy Key. Are you kidding me? And then Randy Myers sets a record for most saves. We walked through that year. We were wire to wire. Man, all I could see in my mind was us hoisting the trophy. And I didn't even have a good year. I put way too much pressure on myself. I think first 2 months of the season, I was hitting like 150. People were throwing stuff at me in the stands. It was crazy. But I started to turn it around. Thank God. Sam Perlazzo one day after like first month and a half, he goes, "What is wrong with you anyway?" What do you mean, Sam? What do you mean? I don't know. I just replaced Cal Ripken. I got people throwing things at me and stuff. He goes, "Buddy, you got to relax, man. You have got to relax." I did. And somehow I did. I think I kind of reverted back to the mental training skills. And I ended up settling in and playing pretty well down the stretch. And I felt so good about that team. And I felt good about going into 98 and even 99. I just thought we were so loaded that we just should have done much better after that. But yeah, that's the story about coming over to Baltimore. Cal was awesome every step of the way. I did ask, and I know you're thinking about this, I did ask to talk to Cal. And Cal was nice enough to say, yeah, I'll talk to him. And he basically told me, he said, you got to do what's right for your family. And I feel like I did. We've lived in Baltimore now for over 20 years. My kids are, 3 of my kids are working here in Baltimore. They live here. So, we love this community. We think it's a great baseball city, and we think there are incredible people here in Baltimore, and we'll be here the rest of our lives.
Wow. Yeah, you read my mind. I wanted to know about what Cal was during the transition there, because, I think so much of the time, or at least the opinion might be like, when guys are shortstops, they're like, they take a lot of pride in playing shortstop. Like, that's probably one of the most prideful positions on the field, and they probably don't want to move to a different position. But it sounds like he was, pretty gracious about the whole thing.
Well, Cal was incredibly gracious. And as a matter of fact, he helped me so much. He played catch with me every day. Every day he played catch with me. And every day we talked baseball. We talked about our pitchers' tendencies. We talked about positioning. We talked just about everything. Cal always stayed after the game late. And there were many nights he and I would be showering at like 1 a.m, just talking shop, man. I loved him so much, playing with him and just watching his professionalism on the baseball field as a baseball player, but how he treated people, how he handled fans. It was just mind blowing. At the end of his run, he would wait in stadiums and sign for everybody. And there were lines that went outside stadiums. Unbelievable. And I know everybody hears the stories, and I'm here to tell you it's all true and it's all great.
Wow. One of the sticking with shortstop really quick, one of the things I've always heard is that like the concept of a bigger shortstop, like a Cal Ripken Jr. or a Corey Seager now, it's like, they're too big to play shortstop. They got to move off the position at some point. Why do you think that is? Like, is that just is Corey Seager eventually gonna have to go play third?
I don't think so. And I think Cal kind of proved that the big man can. And Cal was took care of himself his whole career. I mean, what an amazing athlete. He was a rock his whole career. I mean, his body was strong. He moved well. He had a great first step. He had an awesome pre-pitch where his feet were always off the ground at contact, and he could react as well as anybody, as well as a little guy. And he had the longer strides. I think sometimes those bigger guys, the perception is, oh, they might be moving a little bit slower, but his footwork and his steps to a baseball were so efficient that his 3 strides would be like my 4 strides, or he just took less time to get there. It just seemed like, it might have been a little bit slower, but he was striding out efficient steps, make his plays, cover so much ground out there. Yeah, an incredible athlete. And to your point, yeah, I completely understand that, because I know at the end of my career, they said, well, no, you're going to have to be a utility guy now. Are you kidding me? I could still play shortstop every day. You just have that in you. And I know Cal felt that. I know he did. But for as gracious as he was and such a team player, he never, ever exposed that to me.
Wow. I'd love to talk about your broadcasting career. So your transition into broadcasting kind of coincided with that great resurgence of the Orioles in 2012. When you look back at all the years you had in the booth, like what kind of stands out the most to you?
Man, I enjoyed watching Buck work his magic out there and how he brought his teams together, back through 2012, 2014, 2016, when they were making it into the postseason. And he did it just like he did with the Yankees. When he first went over to the Yankees, and he tells the story, he approached Don Mattingly, captain, and said, listen, man, you're going to have to control this team, really. And I think most players look to their peers. They look for that team captain to take the lead. So, Buck approached Adam Jones, Nick Markakis, Matt Wieters, the veterans on the team, and said, if you guys want to turn this around, well, Adam, you're going to have to run hard down the first baseline every time. Nick, you can't give away at bats. Matt, you're going to have to take control of this pitching staff, that kind of verbiage. And they loved it. They said, we finally have, somebody that is legit. And they followed his lead right till the end, man. They played so hard for him. And then they ended up picking some awesome pieces up. JJ Hardy, of course, Manny came up, and Scope. I mean, these guys were incredible. And JJ Hardy at shortstop was amazing and so good for Manny and Jonathan Scope. Manny Machado would not be Manny Machado if it weren't for JJ Hardy. I'll tell you that right now. Taught him about work ethic, taught him about humility, taught so much. And really, that's the beauty, I think, of the game, man. You find the good guys, the solid pros, the elite players that are, go about their business the right way. And you hope the young guys come up and take note of that. And Buck Showalter had the right young guys at the right time. He had a solid coaching staff. And yeah, it was so much fun watching that team go about their business. And I think what's really special about that is when you have teams like that and you have a solid core of leaders like Markakis and Jones and Wieters and Hardy, when guys go down or get hurt and they have to call somebody up, they slide right into place because they see what's happening all around them. And they know, I got to raise the bar, man. I got to be up to snuff here. I got to run hard. I got to break up double plays. And that's the way the game was played for Buck Showalter. And he was really great at leading them for a number of years.
Wow, I'm getting nostalgic just thinking about that great 5-year run they had there. But some of my favorite memories, of course, watching the team on the field were, you and Gary Thorne up there in the booth. I think you guys had some of the best chemistry up there together. Like, how great was it to have a fellow Mainer and Gary Thorne up there with you, and just like, somebody as polished and professional as he was?
Yeah, man. Oh, Gary Thorne. Are you kidding me? Yeah, University of Maine guy. He was a lawyer. So we had something in common. And when I got traded over to the Mets, Gary Thorne was working for the Mets. And I always used to kind of give him a hard time, tease him about his voice. And so, hi, Gary, how you doing? Just try to throw out a TV voice at him. And he'd get a little chuckle about that. He probably took offense to it, to be honest with you. But working with him was such an amazing thrill. Everybody really I worked with. And I know Gary, certainly a soft spot in my heart for Gary Thorne. But think about this: Joe Angel, Fred Mafra, Jim Palmer, Jim Hunter. I mean, every one of these guys like a Hall of Fame broadcaster or announcer. And I got to learn from these guys. And to a man, every one of them treated it as preparation, man. Their preparation is what they hung their hat on. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm home again, because I love the preparation part of it as well. I learned so much from those guys and what they brought every night. I enjoyed going and calling those games with those guys, and I really miss it. I miss it a lot.
Do you still keep up with Gary? Do you want to see him call some hockey now that he has availability?
Listen, Gary Thorne calling hockey. He could screw up a dang baseball name, but he'll rip out a Russian or a Czechoslovakian's name quicker than anything, man. And he could call some hockey. Yeah, he is incredible. But Gary Thorne can call about anything. There was one off season I heard his voice. It was like on a bowling. He was calling bowling. He's done it all, man. He is a class act and a great pro.
From all your times and all your games up there in the booth, do you have a favorite game or a favorite memory of a game that you had called?
Man. Oh, I don't know about, what I really loved? I loved when we would go out into the Monument Park and do a segment out there and have interaction with the fans, because really ultimately it's what the sport is about, the fans, and to have their, injection out there, it made me feel good. They felt good, I think, about me as a player, and they just loved being part of it all. And I loved interacting with them. And we did some fun skits, man. We had like Christmas in the middle of summer a couple times that Gary and I were in like a snow globe. that was super fun. Yeah, we had a blast, and we had some creative people. Don D'Agostino, who is the producer there now, still, she's very creative, and so we had so much fun. There were countless shows. To be honest with you, though, the ones that stick out are the ones that I didn't even call, like in the postseason when we were beating up on the Tigers, man. It was I was up there in the press box, and to see the sea of orange towels, and then when Delman Young hit that double down the line, I'm like, just mind-blowing stuff. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, I miss all that because, the Orioles are still in this rebuilding mode now. Like they just came off 14 losses in a row, which that's heartbreaking in its own right. But, times are bleak. What are some of the bright spots you think fans can look to now? Is it the guys coming up? Is it the Graysons and the Adleys? Is that kind of what fans can look forward to now?
Yeah, I think they have to, because I don't know that the major league team, although it's fun watching, Trey Mancini, what an amazing story, and a guy that came up through the organization. That is really the beauty when you see guys work their way up through the organization, climb that ladder, and then have an impact at the major league level, and then go through the adversity like a guy like Trey Mancini. Wow, is he now a part of the Oriole culture? He is sewn right in, man, forever. He is a special player, special person too. These guys are exceptional coming up through the organization and then being some of the best in the game right now. Means is super special on the bump. He's learned so much, and I love how he's helping some of the younger guys, Zimmerman, and him have, they're it seems like they're joined at the hip right now, trying to learn from each other. So I think it's fun watching those guys, but yeah, it's the young guys where the promise is. The last couple drafts, the Orioles have been able to draft higher. So following them, and they're doing pretty well, I think, in the minor leagues. So, their day will come in the big leagues. So there's something to look forward to down the road.
Have you ever been a part of anything remotely close to a 14-game losing streak? What's a clubhouse like when you're on a skid like that?
Not good. Yeah, not good. It's tough, right? Because I think, there were a couple years that the Orioles didn't play well, and we had great talent. 99, 2000, even 98. Those 3 years were as frustrating for me as any, because I just felt like our talent was too good. There's no way we should be losing. But when you get into those losing kind of ruts, the mentality is, here we go again. What's going to happen now? Even when you have a lead going in the 8th, how are we going to botch this one up? And I think that's human nature, and it's unfortunate. But, I think the pros, they just, hey, let's put our best foot forward. You try to get out of that kind of mental rut, because I promise you, everybody thinks that when you're not playing well, guys say, hell, here we go again kind of thing. And it just keeps going and going. It's so hard to get out of it. You always hope for the big hit or somebody just slam the door on the mound, right? But sometimes it just doesn't happen for another couple days. So you just keep grinding, man. You keep putting your work in, and hold yourself accountable for what you can control.
All right, so I have one more question and then rapid fire. Thank you so much for your time, by the way. So what is the
Absolutely.
future? What does the future hold for Mike Bordick? I've seen you do the guest instructor at some spring trainings for the Orioles. You're still involved with the team in that kind of capacity. You've done work with like your baseball factory, the League of Dreams. Like, is full-time coaching something you'd be interested in? Like, what's next for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be managing a major league team one day. Maybe not next year, maybe not 2 years from now, but that's my dream. I was hoping I'd have an opportunity to maybe manage the Orioles one day, but I'm staying involved in the game of baseball. I think it's too good. I think kids need to be involved, especially after this past year with baseball. So my goal right now, to be honest with you, is try to inspire kids to stay active in sport, to try to keep them mentally strong and resilient. I love talking to kids about health and wellness, which I think is something that we all need to talk about and re-educate ourselves along with the youth in America, because the COVID thing, I know we got the vaccine going right now, but there something that they don't talk about enough is the people that have the pre-existing conditions, whether it be obesity, diabetes, heart disease, they are the ones that are so susceptible to these kind of illnesses. And a lot of it can be taken care of through proper nutrition, maybe a little bit more exercise, maybe cutting back on some sodas every now and then, So a lot of times my message, especially young kids, is be careful about drinking all the sugary beverages. I know Gatorade has been a staple, it seems, for a number of years, but it certainly is not healthy for a young kid to chug Gatorades thinking that he's a professional athlete. It's just too much sugar. And, I think those liquid energy drinks and sodas kids need to stay away from, and even juices. If you're going to have juice, eat it, get it from a fruit, eat an apple or eat an orange, so you get a little fiber in there. Those orange juices and apple juices, it's all sugar, man, and it just goes right into the system, and it isn't good. It is not good for you at all. And down the road, that's when the obesity and the diabetes and those kind of things kick in. So if kids can learn about that now, they'll have a much healthier and more successful athletic career, and just feel better in general, I think.
What a great message. I'm looking forward to you as a manager, by the way. That got me really excited just thinking about that. All right,
Yeah.
rapid fire. Who is the best pitcher that you played behind?
Ooh, man. Mike Mussina, arguably the best, could pinpoint everything. And if he didn't, he knew it when he got out there. I saw him win games throwing fastball, changeup. He had incredible command of his stuff. He was dominant throughout his career. I loved playing behind him because I think nowadays, unfortunately, wait, is this is rapid fire,
No,
right?
it's just, yeah, you're good.
I know nowadays it's just a max effort, man. And I don't know how defenders can even anticipate. Guys are just chucking, man. They're not hitting their spots. Playing behind Mike Mussina, man, he hit his spots and you can anticipate, to get a half step jump on a guy, things like that. It's so much fun playing behind quality pitchers like that. And I would be remiss if I did not throw Dave Stewart in there as well. One of the most amazing competitors ever. Man, one day I went to pick up I didn't know it was his. I thought it was one of my partners out there in the infield. I picked up his glove. Oh my gosh. He gave me this like death stare. And I was like, here you go, Stu, man, right out of the field. One of the most intense pitchers I've ever seen on game day. But if it wasn't his time to start, man, one of the nicest guys in the world.
Those are great ones. Who is the funniest teammate you played with?
My gosh. Funniest teammate. Golly. Man, everybody in baseball, I think, has a pretty good sense of humor. Well, I don't know if there was like a stand-up comedian, but some of the things that I thought were kind of humorous was like Carney Lansford was the team captain for the Oakland A's, and that rookie hazing kind of thing. Sometimes it get a little out of control, but he'd do things like cut guys' ties up and put them in a cup. If you fell asleep on a short flight, he'd turn his World Series ring around and smack you on the forehead. That's not really funny, I know, but I don't know. I always thought it was comical because I wasn't the one getting hit in the forehead, But
Yeah.
listen, all these guys had great sense of humor. Jeff Rabelais was a funny guy. Scott Heeman, a guy I came up with, was incredibly funny. Yeah, but I don't know that there was anybody like an Adam Sandler.
Which infield playing surface was your favorite and least favorite to play on?
Okay, well, when I came up, the Oakland Coliseum, hands down the best infield I had ever played on. The dirt was amazing, unless it was a day game where it get a little dried out. But it's like your spikes would go in and it wouldn't chew up the dirt. Perfect tops every night. And Oakland, the temperature was like 65 to 70 every night, so it's nice and cool, kept you fresh. The only thing about the Coliseum that was a little suspect was the foul ground. Even though I had a huge target over there, Mark McGuire, and actually Jason Giambi was there a couple times too. They were big, so they kind of stood out, but it seemed like they were just on an island, so much foul ground back there. So it was tough in that sense, but the fielding conditions were perfect. But some of the old fields, man, Fenway Park was terrible. And I love that stadium because, growing up in New England, I had a green monster in my backyard, a couple of spruce trees that we used to use at wiffle ball and stuff. But the playing surface was horrendous. It's like they had frost heaves in it from the winter, and the dirt was bad too, man. That was a rough one to play on.
Is there a player in the big leagues right now that reminds you of yourself?
Yeah, Tatis a little bit. I don't know, man. It's hard to compare. These guys are amazing athletes. I really don't know. It's hard to say. And all these guys could hit, man. I couldn't hit. So yeah, but there are a lot of great defenders. I love watching them all. I don't know if I can compare anybody. Really, I think they're all just so much better.
Like, so any defensive whiz out there at shortstop, do they kind of have a soft place in your heart?
They all do, man. I love watching the athleticism. You know what does bother me though, and I'm going to vent with you a little bit. When they changed the rules about taking guys out at second base or not being able to run over the catcher, I think that really hurt the game, because I think there was an incredible art to avoiding injury. And I think the integrity of the game is run scoring and run prevention, and breaking up double plays and blocking the plate at home. I mean, it just seems like it's hardball, man. It's big league baseball. And I think I would love to watch like Tatis Jr. try to get taken out, somebody going hard where he's got to jump up over him, maybe get clipped, but still get off one of those great throws. That's what I miss the most, man, because I think they would be so much fun to watch doing that.
Do you think that with the runner at second and extra innings and some of these other rule changes, do you think that baseball is kind of getting away from like the crux or the root of the game or the spirit of the game?
Well, I admire him for trying to do things to maybe increase some fans. I think the game in general can get kind of slow at times, so they're trying to speed it up. There are some things I'm certainly not a big fan of. I don't think, to be honest with you, that there's enough talent for there to be too many extra inning games. I just don't think there's enough depth pitching wise. So I think it's kind of smart to try to cut it back, because I'll tell you right now, if the Orioles had to play 18 inning games, maybe 2 of them over the last couple months, their pitching would be depleted. I don't know where they would go. They'd have to start going into the single A and double A. It's a little scary in that regard. So, I think trying to cut it back like that is probably a smart thing for the game.
Switching back to you for just a second, which accomplishment do you take more pride in? The 110 consecutive games without an error, or making the 2000 All-Star team?
I don't know. I think the 110 games without an error, because I've always kind of hung my hat on my defense. The defense is what got me there. And, it's so cool that I think when you work at something your whole life, and then for me, I'm not kidding you now, when I was like 36 and 37 years old, the game finally started slowing down for me. It was always like high intensity, everything's fast. And maybe I was just getting slower, who knows? But I think, oh man, what did I do? Did you come back, please?
Yeah,
There you are.
yeah.
Okay. So I think what happens is after so many repetitions, and that's why you see guys like Nelson Cruz, old C now, 42, and he's still an elite hitter. He's seen so many pitches. He's seen so many release points that the game is slow for him now, it seems. And if he can stay healthy, he will continue to hit until as long as he wants. And for me, I still could move athletically. And I felt like I'd seen so many ground balls and so many hops that I could, position myself a little bit better and maybe not get fooled on some ground balls or tied up. So in that regard, I feel good about that because of longevity and the fact that, I finally got to slow the game down and really see it through a different lens, something that I had worked so hard at my whole life.
I always like to end with this one. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Oh, I don't know. I've had so much great advice. Renee Latchman used to always say, play the game hard, play the game right. And, I always tried to do that. And, that's a little simple. But yeah, I don't get caught up too much. I don't something that I look at every day. I have multiple quotes that I get motivated from. I look to other people for motivation. I'm always keeping my eyes open and ears to learn from other people and things like that. But, play the game hard, play the game right. I think you could use that in life, right?
Yeah, nothing better than that. This has been amazing, by the way. Thank you so much for being here and coming on. All of my Orioles fans, friends, when I told them about this, were really anxious to hear from you again. I just really appreciate your time and all the work you're doing with League of Dreams and everything else you have going on.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for asking me about that. And thanks for the interview, man. That was a lot of fun.